were you doing when you were 14 years old?
In terms of work, in terms of studies, in terms of what?
In terms of what were you doing in life?
Okay, so this is completely out of the blue, first of all. I remember very clearly that I was struggling with maths. I was playing a lot of football. And in terms of work, I was earning 20 rupees a week washing my dad's car.
Were you at school then, I'd imagine?
Of course I was at school.
Did you have a girlfriend?
No.
Okay, so that's full disclosure from Alex. I'm just saying. Did you have your own application?
What application are you talking about? We didn't have mobile phones back then.
Were you into technology?
Yeah, FIFA 99.
This is why I don't have these conversations with Alex. What if I told you that, well, really bright 14-year-olds now have their own apps. They're whiz kids, they're technologists, they have jobs that pay a lot more than how much you earn.
20 rupees.
And they're inspirational speakers as well.
I'd believe you because I know who you're talking about.
He's right here. Tanmay Bakshi, thanks so much for joining us on Bloomberg Quinn.
Of course, glad to be here.
So, what we want to do today is essentially be the two duds that we are, because we always thought that we were the young ones on this show, but now we actually got a young gun, blazing, and he's, going to answer all the questions that Alex and I have and teach us a few things about life as well.
Yeah, I mean, so you asked me a question about what I was doing when I was 14, but Tanmay, as he was saying just before we started rolling, had already developed an application when he was, 6?
I started coding and started developing applications when I was around 5 years old, but I had my first iOS app, T-Tables, which helps you learn your multiplication tables, accepted into the App Store when I was 9 years old.
Ayush, you could have done with that application.
If you had a phone.
So we didn't, okay, so that's our excuse.
But I'll tell you what, when you face the camera, Alex, let's be honest, and this is, a revelation for anyone who faces the camera in any form is lying if they're not a bag of nerves then. Right? Of course. There's always butterflies. But this 14-year-old with us gives the most inspirational talks with cheers and jeers, everyone being so happy about it. Are you nervous when you do it?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say nervous, no, because the thing is I love AI, I love technology, I love working with it, and I love talking about it as well. First of all, coding itself grew on me as something that I love to do. It's sort of like a hobby, a habit that I love to do at 5 years old, and so did speaking, since I started speaking at around 9 years old when I created my first iOS app. So I wouldn't necessarily say nervous. In fact, I get really excited about sharing what I know about these sorts of technologies with the rest of the community.
But I'm really curious about this. You were 5 years old. I vaguely remember what I was doing when I was 5 years old. What drove you into coding?
Sure. Yeah. So originally, my dad used to work as a computer programmer. So as you can imagine, at 5 years old, watching my dad program all day would be so fascinating, right? I'd be watching him program, and even just displaying my name on the screen, or even adding 2 numbers, would be so fascinating to me. And so the thing is, I thought it was like magic at 5 years old. I never knew the concept of a job, right? I never knew people were paid to code. I just thought it was another thing to have fun with. And so my dad saw the curiosity that I had for programming, got me into the world of technology and programming and coding, and he did that with very simple languages like Fox Pro, Batch, with the REPL style. And then from there, I got into more complex languages using the internet and different books as learning resources, including Visual Basic for Windows development. And in fact, funny story actually, in grade 3, I wasn't very good at my times tables. And so I had a test coming up. Right. And the thing is, I had to get ready for the test.
Right.
And so the best way I thought I could get ready for the test was to create a Windows app to help me practice my times tables.
Okay.
So I made the app, practiced my times tables, got a good score on the test, and then from there, I thought at grade 4, or 9 years old, why can't I take whatever I built in Windows, make it an iOS app, and allow others to learn from it as well? Okay. Hence, that's how I submitted my first iOS app.
That's the first application that you put. How many have you published since then?
Well, publicly on the App Store, at least, I have around 6 apps, but locally or publicly on GitHub, YouTube, my book, over around 60 to 70 applications.
Wow. No, and when you talk about YouTube as well, you have a very popular channel, Tanmay, on YouTube. Perhaps that gets a lot more views than some of Alex and my videos. So I want to understand. So Alex, Tanmay was mentioning AI. What if I told you he came up with this app called Ask Tanmay? All right.
What does it do?
Tanmay essentially Ask Tanmay is one of the first algorithms you've come up with which use AI?
Yeah. In essence, the point of Ask Tanmay is to answer natural language questions just like IBM Watson played Jeopardy, except instead of using the Jeopardy format, I'm doing Q&A format.
Now you got to
with
break this
factoid
down for us by showing it to us.
Absolutely.
Okay, come, let's have
All
it.
right, let's take a look. So this is a demo of Ask Tanmay in action. Now what I can do is actually run the Ask Tanmay system. It's a Python script. Now Aayush, what question would you like to ask?
Okay, let's ask Tanmay who's the current Prime Minister of India.
Perfect, sounds good. So now I'm just going to type in, who is the current Prime Minister of India? All right, simple question. So we send that question over to Ask Tanmay.
Right.
Now it's going to invoke several APIs, including IBM Watson and BiDAF from TensorFlow. And as you can see, it gives you two answers as candidates, which are both correct. Narendra Modi and Shirendra Modi.
So how did you do this? I mean, so this took you what, 1 week, Tanmay, to come up with this?
Well, the original version took me around a week.
Okay.
However, from there I expanded it, and to this day,
how
I'm
do you go
working on
about it?
Sure. So now, actually, the original one and actually the current one works with something a little bit like this. So imagine you have a question that the user gives you.
Right.
All right. Now, the first step is to actually gather information, and so the way you gather information is by doing something called Search Engine Result Summary Extraction, or SERSE for short.
Right.
And so that'll go to Google and collect documents which may contain the answer.
Okay.
After that, the question also goes to a step called ATD, or answer type detection, which also includes specific answer type detection. I won't talk about that just yet.
Okay.
And so Watson's NLC service, or natural language classification, powers that. And then what happens is SERSE feeds into another step called candidate answer generation, or CAG.
Right.
Then that feeds into another step called CAFS, or candidate answer filtering and scoring, which itself contains around 6 different sub-steps.
Okay.
And so answer type detection comes back into play here, and so it filters out answers that cannot be correct.
Okay.
After that, they're ranked using another deep learning algorithm. And then they're finally given to the user as output.
So which is why you have 2 results and they're described in terms of percentage.
Exactly. So it's given confidence, and that confidence is actually powered by 2 things. First of all, Watson's Natural Language Understanding Service, which comes into play at CAFS, and actually something called BiDAF, or Bidirectional Attentional Flow, which ties in with candidate answer generation.
So I actually have something to add to this as well. So it goes, my little algorithm, after listening to that, says, that's all I can add to that. Now let's continue having our chat on this side, guys. So Tanmay, this took you all of what, 1 week to come up with the initial draft?
The initial draft, yes. The initial draft took me around a week, which I presented at Interconnect 2016, my first major keynote, from which point I actually had around 2 weeks to work on the next version before IBM Developer Connect in Bangalore, which was in 2016 again. And then after that, of course, I continued working on Ask Tanmay. In fact, it's completely open source. I actually open sourced it on stage at Developer Connect. So it's completely developed to the developer community.
Is this the kind of stuff that essentially goes in the back of asking Siri a question, say?
Yeah.
Not this currently. Siri's more like a chatbot. It's more like a Watson conversation. Everything's hard-coded, but the way it executes those hard-coded actions is through AI. But Ask Tanmay answers factoid questions.
What is your long-term goal, or what are your plans with Tanmay Teaches?
Sure. Now, not necessarily just with Tanmay Teaches, but generally my goal is to reach out to 100,000 aspiring coders to help them innovate. And in fact, I'm already around 6,000 people there, and so I'm always working towards it through numerous different media, including, of course, my YouTube channel, the books that I'm authoring, and so much more. But apart from that, though, I also have that sort of, goal that I just mentioned that has a milestone to it, but I also have 3 more things that I generally want to continue doing for the next few years, or really however long that I can see into the future.
So you've written 1 book and you're writing another?
Yes, so I have actually written a book called Hello Swift, iOS App Programming for Kids and Other Beginners, currently available for pre-order. And I'm also currently working on co-authoring another book with my mentor, the CTO and VP of IBM Watson, Rob High.
AI is something that you've been very passionate about.
Yes.
But I'll tell you something, Tanmay. You were born post-2000, right? Alex and I are 90s kids, okay? And we actually saw, the evolution of all of these technologies, from floppies to, we talked about it, CD-ROMs to DVDs to Blu-rays, and now everything on the cloud.
So we've actually heard messages, welcome to Creative Infra CD-ROM.
Or the lock on the floppy. Have you used a floppy before?
Well, around 6-7 years old, yes I did. 6-7 years old!
No, I'm saying, Tanmay, when it comes to AI, or cognitive is something that, well, a lot of top companies are using as well now.
Yes.
And perhaps that is the future. Machine learning is being applied as we speak to do some great things. But artificial intelligence per se is a hot topic of debate.
Oh, yeah.
Right? If I were to ask you, are you on the Elon Musk side of it or the Mark Zuckerberg side of it? To make it simple. The Elon Musk side of it, of course, pretty obviously talks about how an AI apocalypse might be coming and we should be prepared for it. Mark Zuckerberg says, hey, AI is going to do great things. Tanmay, on which side of the borderline do you lie?
I completely agree with the positivity of Mark Zuckerberg and the negativity from Elon.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because the reason people are afraid of AI is because they kind of misunderstand what people like Elon Musk try to say.
Right.
And the reason I say that is artificial general intelligence, which is what you see in all the movies and all the literature, is not a thing, and it won't exist. We cannot train AI to self-drive a car for us or do cancer diagnosis, and out of nowhere it's overtaken humanity, is much smarter than us and can do millions of things that we could have never done.
Right.
That's not how it works. AI is use case specific and it's just a set of mathematics. But what Elon Musk is trying to say is not AI is going to replace us and overtake us. He's trying to say that humans themselves will train AI to do bad things.
Simple question. We're not talking about Terminator Judgment Day happening.
Not at all.
I'm just asking a question.
What I can say is that while that won't happen, people will use AI for bad things like they use technology, right? Like you could use a space shuttle to, or any type of, space technology in order to put a man on the moon or to destroy the planet. Or what you could do is you could use it to combat against the people who are trying to destroy the planet.
I believe you've described this as a singularity point which you'll never reach.
Exactly. So the singularity point, just in case some of us don't know, so singularity point being basically the point where AI becomes so intelligent that it knows that it's more intelligent than humans, and it can do whatever it wants to us without any consequence for itself. And so that point won't be reached because computers are incapable, because of the fundamental way we compute, of becoming sentient or conscious or understanding any of the things that they do. Again, it's basically like a generic set of math that can apply to any other set of math. In fact, neural networks are described as universal function approximators. No matter what function you tell them to approximate, they will do it given enough time and energy. Except for the ones that they are physically incapable of doing, like consciousness and sentience.
No, so the way you give the little bit of an asterisk and explainer, just tell me something. Let's forget about AI. Let's forget about all these emerging technologies.
All right.
When you're out there with other 14-year-olds, do you have to explain things a lot to them? Because you have to explain it to us, 20-somethings. So when the 14-year-old comes in, he says, hey man, I played a great game of soccer today, and I scored a goal.
Or ice hockey for him, right?
Anywhere, anyhow, or cricket, and then what is your conversation like? I'm very curious.
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't necessarily explain any AI to them because I don't talk about that in the first place. Okay. I mean, I've tried to get them interested in coding, programming technology, but no, not yet. They're just not interested in it right now.
Okay.
They just don't want to get into it. I've tried a lot, but no. So I mean, there's nothing related to technology that I talk to them about. It's still more sort of, generally what a 14-year-old would talk about. I'm not sure what 14-year-olds would talk about, but just
Google
anything.
it. What would 14-year-olds say?
You probably find something. But then, so having said that, you find that a lot of people that you interact with, a lot of people that you're close to in your friend circle are much older than you?
Which I find more fun. And the reason I say that is because the thing is, when I'm actually talking to people older than me, they can actually kind of understand what I'm saying. And so the thing is,
we're trying to keep up.
But the thing is, I can actually talk to you about technologies like AI, which is what I'm truly interested in. So that's why I think it's a lot more fun talking to those types of people.
You've been here for the best of the month, right? And you've been traveling extensively, inspirational talks, interviews, interactions, meeting your friends. Doesn't it get hectic? I'll tell you why I'm steering clear of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, because Tanmay's 14.
Yeah.
At 14, when I got done with school, okay, if I played a
ran
game of
home to watch
football,
He-Man, is it?
no, I used to pass out. I used to wake up, late night, and I was 14. I still get tired. when I do 2 shoots in a day, I'm a little tired. I'm just saying. Isn't it exhausting to have a schedule like that?
I mean, I think it's really fun. Like, for example, just yesterday, it was yesterday, I think. I was at RGPV Bhopal for their e-sell event, entrepreneurship sell event. And so while I was there, I had a keynote for around an hour on, generally what I'm doing with AI. Then another demonstration of the Now robot plus IBM Watson for another, I think, 30, 40 minutes. Q&A session, a workshop, and then, numerous different interactions after that. And generally, it's really fun because I'm talking about AI.
I have a question just leading from what you were saying, and you described perfectly what you're doing in India. But when you're back home, what does your normal day look like?
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to ask you, because I believe you're homeschooled.
Yes.
So
yes.
I want to understand what you do to unwind, and exactly what Alex asked. What is your day like?
Well, what I do to unwind usually...
Your day first.
Oh, okay, so sure, my day. First of all, homeschooling. Number one thing, of course, I still do that on a schedule. But the thing is, it also gives me a little bit of flexibility. Like, for example, if I have to travel to India, right? I can cover up for it at night or on the weekends, really whenever. So the flexibility is great. But of course, when I wake up, average day in Toronto, wake up, homeschooling, of course. And after that, whatever, work I have to do, I'll do that sort of, homework. I mean, I'm homeschooled. But apart from that, though, actually, very luckily, I'm actually able to tie in whatever I learned during homeschooling with technology, especially math and science, but also topics like language and much more. And so from there, though, what I do to unwind is mainly coding. But, I mean, that takes up around 50% of my day. Yeah. But apart from coding, I also do like recording YouTube videos, authoring books, and also sometimes biking, my favorite outdoor sport, when the Canadian weather allows for it. And also table tennis, my favorite indoor sport. And actually, very, very recently, I started getting into cricket because, actually, funny story, I was in Toronto getting ready to go to the Watson Summit in Denmark. And while I was getting ready, actually, an ex-England cricketer coach, Jeremy Snape, emailed me. And so he said he wants to interview me. And so, of course, he's in England, I'm in Toronto, and since I'm going to Denmark anyway, we thought let's just meet up in the middle in Denmark, so he flew to Denmark as well.
Wow.
And so while we were in Denmark, just before my keynote, he took an interview of me, and during the interview, he taught me some cricket.
That's the best way to learn it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm starting to get into that now as well.
But do you find, I'm sure there are a lot of people in Canada play cricket, because you have a lot of people there.
Well, I wouldn't be sure how many people play cricket. I do know it's a relatively popular sport there. But then again, as you probably know, Canada and hockey are sort of number one sport there.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about coding for fun. Ayush and I were figuring out, which team to play on FIFA.
Yeah, which player to buy in career mode.
Yeah, that was what we were
Those
doing.
were our biggest dilemmas.
It still is, by the way.
Yeah, no, it is. So you do take time out to meet your friends and stuff like that? Like, what is your social life like? Or is it people in the community, from the developer community, that you seem to spend more time with? And that becomes work, my friend. That's why I ask.
I mean, for me, it's fun, first of all. So first of all, for me, interacting with people in the developer community is sort of the number one thing I love to do, all right? But apart from that, I do also get a good mix of, interacting with other people. Like, for example, I mean, from the homeschooling community, from my community, from the conferences that I go to, I meet a lot of new people.
Right.
In fact, my mentors as well, James Archieri, Timothy Duncan, in fact, some of the first people to reach out to me from IBM, building projects. That's all what I love to do, and that's sort of, you could say, quote unquote, my social life. But apart from that, if you were to not count, people older than me, then that would be a good mix.
I'll tell you why, because I spend so much time with him at work, and I do so many shows with him. Once I'm done with work, he's the older one. I don't want to spend time with him. That's why I asked.
So I just like to go home, he likes to go out. But, it's another thing that I want to ask is, you started really, really young. And like you said, you've been speaking with the developer community. You've interacted with several of them. Are you an exception to the rule? As in, did you start significantly earlier than the rest of the people you know, or do you know a lot of young people that are coding now?
Well, I do know that nowadays more young people are starting to get into coding, thankfully. But what I would say is that really, I believe the reason I was able to get into programming in the first place is because I started at a relatively young age. And so if you think about it, it's actually much easier to learn when you're young, right?
It's like a language, I guess.
Exactly. That's the perfect example. If you're learning a language and you don't learn it by a certain age, you cannot learn learn in the future because your brain has deleted those neurons that will actually work towards learning language. It thinks those aren't useful. Like, for example, under a few months old, you can look at two monkeys and easily recognize their faces very, very accurately. But you as an adult, have you ever been able to successfully do that? No. And that's because your brain realized that you never do that in your life, and those neurons just take up resources.
Right.
And so it deletes those billions of neurons that actually handle that. And so the reason I was able to get into coding and all this stuff that I'm really passionate about is because I started at a young age, which is why I always encourage governments, school leaders to actually implement coding, and then from there AI into the curricula to enable them to learn about these future technologies.
Yeah, we grew up learning about MS-DOS, but I mean...
Yeah, no, I mean, so some of the things he said are interesting.
And Paint.
Yeah, Visual Basic as well, but obviously he's taken to the next level. Just stuff that you didn't imagine.
No, but I get that completely. The other question that I was hoping to ask you, leading from the early question that I asked, was do kids perhaps younger than you get in touch with you for advice? And if there are people that are watching that are interested in coding, what would you essentially tell them in terms of what to do? What are the do's and don'ts, essentially?
You need to be passionate about coding if you want to do it. If you're not passionate, don't do it. And the reason I say that is because coding is a field that requires a lot of perseverance.
Right.
If you're not passionate about it, you won't be able to persevere enough. If you stop at the 10th, 50th, 100th, or 1000th error, you won't get anywhere. You need to continue to persevere and understand a few things. Like, for example, every single problem has a solution. There's no way it doesn't have a solution unless the technology doesn't exist. Apart from that, and then you can of course make that technology if it doesn't exist. And apart from that, do realize that every time you solve a problem, not only do you learn how to solve that problem, never will you face that problem again, you'll never face similar problems again either. And so you keep gathering experience, and that continues to make your developer journey smoother and smoother and smoother as you go. And so those are my two top tips, but apart from that, I also believe that you really need to learn at your own pace.
Okay.
Of course, some people learn faster, some people learn slower. If you're very interested in technology and you've already maybe, say, tried coding before, you know the sort of basic concepts, skip straight to a language like Swift. Maybe you learn a little bit slower. Maybe you can start with Scratch, then go to a scripting language like Python, then Swift. Maybe you learn a little bit faster, so you can go directly from Scratch to something like Swift. So it depends on how you learn. Learn at your own pace, however you feel comfortable doing it, and that's also how I recommend schools do it. Don't introduce coding as this regular subject like you teach math, science, and technology right now. You need to teach coding as something that is in the introductory stages introduced manually, or not manually, mandatorily. Now what that means is that you will force them to learn a little bit about coding at a very, very young age though. If they're interested in it, then they can take the optional road of actually doing it.
Right.
If they're not, then don't force them to do it, because coding's, again, a field where you need to be passionate about it, especially if you want to go to AI. Because AI is a field where it's not like, oh, T-tables isn't working, I'll change one line of code and it'll work. Now it's like, okay, the spatial recognition algorithm isn't working. These are the 40 things that could have gone wrong. I have to try each one, and each one in combination with each other one, and each try takes multiple hours or days to train.
Yeah, so that actually,
it's complex.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, you talked about it. You said perseverance is something that you need.
Absolutely.
I want to hear from you. How often have you hit a wall and had to break your way through?
Oh, with every single project.
And how do you deal with it?
I mean, with every single project, you do experience those roadblocks. That's for sure. You will experience them. But the question is, how exactly do you get around them? And really, what I believe is taking a look at the experiences that others have shared on sites like Stack Overflow really help. Taking a look at past experiences. Have I ever dealt with a similar problem before? Again, getting back to that really does help.
And the community helps?
Oh yeah, and the community really does help. Because the thing is, especially when you're working with open source libraries like Keras, TensorFlow, even the IBM Watson SDKs, all these sorts of projects. Whenever you have a problem, you can just go to the GitHub community, the Slack community, and they'll help you out. They'd be glad to. In fact, I've experienced that numerous times, and people are very, very willing to help. That's the best part about the open source developer community.
As a developer,
yes.
What is your ultimate goal?
Well, I wouldn't be able to say my ultimate goal of what I want to do, but I can say that what I want to continue to do as a goal is that, first of all, I want to continue research and development in the field of AI. That's for sure. That's the number one thing I love doing. And then after I research and develop AI and neural network architectures, all that sort of stuff, I want to implement it in fields like healthcare, where it can actually make a huge impact almost immediately. And then I want to take whatever I implement, research, develop, and then share that with the rest of the community so they can improve upon it, so they can build their own systems, so they can do whatever they want with it.
So what's next? The most logical way to do that would be continue this homeschooling route, or would you want to go to college?
Well, I mean, of course I'm going to continue homeschooling for now, but I mean, I'm not too sure things like, which college. Of course I do eventually want to go to, college, university. I'm not sure, where exactly to go, not sure what the plan would be. I'm not sure just yet, at least.
It's a long way off.
Yeah, but what I can say is that I'm very, very interested in the applications and projects that, for example, Stanford, Harvard, MIT, UCI, all these great universities and institutions have been working on. MILA, for example. They've been working on great projects. I'm really, really excited about them. And maybe, I'd love to, be part of that research as well.
On that note, Tanmay, thanks so much for joining us. We hope you keep
you.
spreading the love and that passion for AI to make the world a better place. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned to Blue
Thank you.
Quid.
Bye.